All right, so we are live, it says. And this is the Community Engineering Hangout. It is June. We are Magento Community Engineering, plus a few special guests today. I'm joined by Philip and Steve from Adobe. Yeah, we're going to be talking open source. You may or may not have heard about Adobe's acquisition of Magento 2 weeks ago now, I think, maybe more. It feels longer, but it might have only been 2 weeks. And we're going to dive into what Adobe and especially Steve and Philip think about open source. Yeah, so guys, welcome. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks. Excited to be here.
It's going to be intense. We got live chat open, so if you have any questions for these guys, drop them in live chat, and we'll try and get onto them. But what we'll do first of all, while you are getting your questions in, is I'll give you an update for the last month of May for community engineering, which was ridiculously good. The community do us proud. So let me just get it shared. All right, so here are our pull requests for over the last year. And last year, October was our best month. That was as part of Hacktoberfest. GitHub, we joined on with them, and we had nearly 500 pull requests. But for May this year, we had 638 pull requests created, and 455 of those were merged, or we merged 455 in May. So thank you all so much for that. It has been incredible, and it looks like June is going the same way, considering we're on the 6th and we already have 300 pull requests created this month. So thank you everyone for helping out and joining in. It is a great pleasure to have you all. Yeah, let me just give you a little bit of a breakdown with regards to project-wise. Nearly 400 of those pull requests came onto the Magento 2 repository directly. We had 74 on the MSI project. And then we also had 134 on our dev docs, which is incredible to see. So I think that is with preparation for 2.3 coming up. A lot of the dev docs are being updated. And so you'll see a lot of activity over May and June for dev docs, as well as 16 on the functional testing framework, which is amazing to see as well. Now, with regards to contributors, for May we had nearly 200 unique contributors, which is awesome. And it was nearly 80 of those were contributing for the first time, which is pretty cool. Pretty cool. So and here's something, if May was the first month and you did some contribution, I would love to get some feedback, and I'd love to hear how you found it, and if there's anything we can do better. So feel free to reach out to us on our Slack, or you can also reach out to us via Twitter, or you can directly tweet me. I assume that's something that Phil and Steve have noticed, is that we are quite an active Twitter community. Yeah, I can imagine. All right, now we also have a couple of events coming up that I'd like to highlight. We have an MSI specific contribution weekend that is hosted by Mage Specialist and Bitbull. Those are two of our Italian agencies that are contributing. So that is on the 9th and 10th of June. So if you want to get involved with that, reach out to Bitbull or Mage Specialist and ask how you can help out. During Meet Magento in the UK, we have a contribution day hosted by We Are JH. I will be at that one, so come down and say hi. Bring me some tea so I can bring it back to Germany from the UK. We don't have good tea here in Germany. And then after that, we have a contribution day as part of the Magento hackathon, as part of Meet Magento Germany. So that is the 15th, 16th, and 17th of June. Organized by Magento. Claudia is organizing that one. You can either do the Magento traditional hackathon, you can do the contribution day, or you can do a mix of both. So get yourself registered. That is in Leipzig as part of Meet Magento Germany. And I will also be there. And there will be a kayak event in the evening, I think. So we're going to go see Leipzig via kayak. I think that'll be cool. Yeah, so those are the events coming up. If you need any more information about that, reach out to us. We are on Twitter. You can join our Slack, or you can email us to find out that information. Typos. Yeah, I now that I've started tweeting, I've noticed how many typos I make. So I appreciate the typos. All right, so that's enough about this month. Now, as soon as we heard that Adobe were acquiring Magento, a lot of people, the main question that came up was, what are we doing with open source? Is it still a thing? So I thought we would go straight to the sources. And I invited Philip and Steve here to talk about open source. Probably can't talk that much about the acquisition, but we can definitely talk about open source. So guys, welcome. And it's a pleasure to have you. I hope we don't scare you off. So how about we start with introducing yourself? We'll start with Steve. Why don't we?
Okay, awesome. So, my name's Steve Gill. I'm a part of Adobe's open source office and also on the developer experience team here. And I've been doing open source work since 2009, so quite a few years. If you're familiar with the Apache Cordova or Adobe PhoneGap projects, I've been working on those pretty much since the inception. And I joined Adobe back in end of 2011 when Adobe acquired Nitobi, which was the company that created PhoneGap. Yeah, and I've been here ever since. When you hear Phil's story, you might hear a lot of similarities. We actually both worked at Nitobi together. We actually go back even further. We went to university together. He was a few years older than me, but we knew each other. We knew of each other, let's say. Both from living in Vancouver, Canada, but now I'm based here in San Francisco, working out of the Adobe office here. Yeah, we should talk more about what I do. When I first worked on PhoneGap, I was primarily doing community-related work. So similar to what David is doing here, I would host meetups, I would write blog posts, a lot of information on getting started and trying to help build a community around that project. And I also was doing a lot of release engineering. But over the years, I graduated to doing more full-time engineering and kind of doing more of a jack of all trades type role. Maybe before I dive more into that, we should let Phil introduce himself.
Sure. That was a great intro, Steve. I appreciate the historical background there. Yeah, Steve and I have worked together for a long time. And I came into Adobe just like him through the acquisition of Nitobi. And through we worked together in an Apache project called Cordova for many years. I left in 2013 to go work at a company called Sauce Labs. And I came back in 2016 because Adobe is an awesome place to work. So, but everything else that Steve says essentially applies to me too. We're both developers. We've both been super active in open source for going on almost 10 years. And Steve has been doing this longer than I, but we're both involved in the open source office at Adobe, which is an office that aims to shepherd processes and make contributing to open source across the company easier, trying to modernize that. So that's kind of our role, and we're excited to talk to you all about that in the next hour or so.
Cool. Oh, that's cool. So first and foremost, what's the important Twitter handle for the open source in Adobe? Because we like our Twitter. So which one should we be using?
You know what? You want me to answer, Phil? I'll go. I would say probably the Adobe IO handle, which a lot of people may have already found. Adobe IO is kind of our developer brand, and that's primarily where we're tweeting about open source right now.
Okay, so that's where we should get that information, and we can send our tweets directly to the Adobe IO Twitter then. Cool. What do you kind of do in that team? What does your day-to-day look like?
Steve, I'm going to leave this one to you because it's kind of your baby.
Okay, so the day-to-day is usually we have a handful of requests coming in from employees across the company, and it's usually there's three main categories of requests. We have personal contributions, so that's somebody working on doing open source contributions on their own time, at home. We have community contributions, so that's like while you're working, you're actually contributing to open source projects that are not Adobe owned. And then the last one is company open source projects, which are, hey, I have this awesome project I'm working on, I want to open source it. How do we do this? How do I get this on github.com/Adobe? What is the steps? That kind of stuff. So when these requests come in, we have different workflows for all three. Usually the most involved one is open sourcing Adobe code, creating a new Adobe open source project. And in that one, historically, we've had not a very nice process in place. It gets bounced around various teams in legal to do various different reviews. It gets bounced around branding and marketing. It used to be completely an email-based flow. And let's just say it really made it difficult for Adobe employees to be working in open source. But since we've created the open source office, which is, I'd say about the end of 2016 is when we did this, we started pulling in all of these requirements, centralizing around one place, figuring out what's required, clarifying it, making it very transparent for anyone who wants to go through the process. And then this past year, we've done a really good job of trimming that process. So now it's actually, a lot of it falls onto our hands, the open source offices, to determine, is this something that needs to go through a full legal review? Or is this something simple that we can just kind of open source? And we've worked with our friends in legal. We've come up with some new exceptions and some new policies, and the process has become much, much quicker. Now, a lot of times we can get a new project coming in open source within a day or two. And that's really the kind of speed that we want. And in terms of contributing to projects on your own time or contributing back to community projects, we've made that really easy too. If we've previously approved a project that an Adobe employee has wanted to contribute to, say something like Babel, we would just add that to a brand new whitelist that we've created, and anyone in the future who wants to contribute to that project, it's already approved. You don't need to ask for permission anymore. So these are just some of the steps we're taking to try and get Adobe employees to start embracing open source. We're seeing a lot of positive movement, so we're really happy about that. Anything to add there, Phil?
No, I think you did a good job.
Thanks.
Cool. So you talked a lot about like company culture and getting company culture into contribution and everything. What for you, maybe for you personally, what kind of drives you towards the open source world? And yeah.
My role with PhoneGap, it started off as, like I mentioned earlier, as like a community champion kind of a role. And that is still the part that really excites me, is the ability to release some code, have other people not just use it, but also build a community around it. You support these people by building documentation, but then once they start reporting issues, sending pull requests, Eventually, you can give them committer status. They start contributing and become committers to the project, owners of the project. To me, that is one of the most exciting parts about working in open source is to build that community, be a part of that community. And that's what always keeps driving me to do more open source. I mean, even now I'm still involved in the Cordova project, even though I don't work on it as much as I used to. But that community, it just holds a special place in my heart to see all these people come and really gain value from this little piece of code that I wrote, and then to give back to it as well. So that's what drives me.
Yeah, I have maybe a bit more different take on an answer there. I started in open source purely through my job. I had coming out of university, I really had no idea of how open source really worked, and it was through my first job at Adobe, which was a small consultancy, and this is the consultancy that eventually Adobe acquired. We had no choice a lot of times but to leverage that community to be able to get some of our work done. So in the end, it was a matter of like resourcing and leveraging the community to ship products that the consultancy relied on a lot of times. So less of a like hippie kumbaya kind of answer and more of a just practical realities settling in. But that's how I got introduced to it. But what keeps driving me back to it, I think for me personally, is more around the end result, more around the quality of what open source projects tend to exhibit. The best software, I think we all agree, tends to be open source. What's that line? Something like, with enough eyeballs, all bugs are shallow. I really believe in that one. And so what keeps driving me back to it is that I get to build the best possible thing by having the most possible people look at it, test it, push it to its limits, and then get involved and build on top of it. So that's what I love about open source, is building the best thing.
Nice, cool. It's great. I think for me, like I got into open source because someone pushed me into it essentially through a job. I got recommended like, oh, do you want to start contribution or do you want to start, speaking? Like open source for me is not just about the system, but like the whole community. And so I like to hear that it's kind of similar, kind of a bit of both, I think, a mix of both for me. And it's nice, reassuring to hear that from you guys. So, like, as part of the acquisition, there was quite a lot going on Twitter about what is Adobe's plans. What are Adobe's plans for the open source part of Magento? And you probably can't tell us exactly what the plans are because you might not know right now. But maybe you can give us a little bit of kind of, do you know why Magento was bought, or do you know like if open source was involved in that, if it was that kind of system?
I was thinking of wearing a shirt that was going to say, I can neither confirm nor deny to this hangout, because I had a feeling that acquisition questions would be coming our way. Honestly, when I woke up the morning of the announcement of the acquisition, it was just as surprising. I wasn't in the boardroom where these decisions were made or anything like that, so I don't know, honestly. But one thing that's been made clear to me since then, and I think Matt AC mentioned as much in, I'm not sure if it was exactly this hangout or another community-focused hangout, maybe last week or the week before, is that Adobe has a lot to learn from Magento around how to build a community, how to create like a sustainable project through the community and with the community. And so I know for a fact that we don't want to come in and change anything at Magento. If anything, I feel like we want to just sit and observe and learn, and then try to replicate it with some of the other similar kinds of efforts that we have going on. So that's as much, and that's honestly, that's me speculating. So I can neither confirm nor deny.
Yeah, that's good. I was at Magento Netherlands, and it is interesting when you're like, here's what I think, but I can't, it's like, what can I tell you? I'm not sure. But I think what's quite interesting is you both came from a company that were acquired into Adobe. So it might be interesting to talk a little bit about that process. I assume things have changed since the last time, since your company was acquired, but it might be interesting to we might get a bit of understanding as to the process of the acquisition from that side, if you can share anything.
Yeah, for sure. I can share my experience. It's been a long time. This was, I think, fall of 2011 when I remember being in our single room little office in Gastown in Vancouver, brick walls, maybe 800 square feet office with all 15 or so employees, all in an open kind of space. And we all got kind of ushered into a room one at a time to speak with Andre Charland and Dave Johnson, two of the co-founders of Nitobi, where they broke the news to us. And so it seems like a long time ago now. But I'd be dishonest if I said it wasn't challenging, exciting, and the full spectrum of emotions during that time and after as well. Obviously, the way a small company works, the way a 15-person company works compared to in 2011, I don't know how big Adobe was, but it was in the several thousands for sure. Now I think it's over 17,000 or somewhere around there. So just the way these groups of people work is completely different, right? So it is reasonable to expect things are going to change. But I was not prepared. I had never worked in a large company before, so I was not prepared for that. And I think, honestly, our attitudes working in a small consultancy did not serve us well during this transition. And that was something that I struggled with for a long time. And eventually was, I think, part of the reason why I left in 2013 in the first place. All of that being said, there's also a reason I came back to Adobe in 2016. It's because we're given a lot of freedom and leeway. Employees at Adobe really care about each other. Your well-being is top of mind for all of your coworkers, your superiors, at all times. So it's a really, I think, nurturing place to work, and I'm very grateful to work there. Part of the reason why I came back in 2016. But it's a challenge. I think if I was to give one piece of advice, it would be to kind of ensure to represent yourself appropriately. I think in the amount of people that make up a big company, you have to make sure you're seen. It's just natural, and it's not something I think that we did coming from a small company very well, and I don't think that served us very well either. So it's kind of how I see it. Steve, what do you think?
Yeah, I think you did a good job of covering that kind of wide range of emotions when it first happened. I was a bit more junior than Phil when it happened, so I think I was leaning more towards the excited portion. Getting a chance to work for this large company that makes some awesome products that I've used in university and growing up. And I've always been a very kind of optimistic, look for the best things, look for the best intention out of everybody. There was definitely some challenges, that first year during that big transition. Just learning how everything worked, learning, what we're supposed to share, what we're not supposed to share. I don't know. But over the years, like I stuck it out, and things got a lot better as we continued to learn their culture, Adobe's culture, as we as a startup learned how we should be working with these big company folks. You know, since then, I think things have changed quite a bit as well. Adobe has acquired a lot of companies since I've been there in 2011. And I think they get better and better at this every time. And I mean, even the fact that they've connected Phil and I, you know, part of the open source office, to start going and outreaching and connecting with the at-large Magento community, I think shows just how much Adobe has changed and how much they really care about having a good onboarding experience and kind of welcoming the community in a positive way.
Yeah, it's cool. I think it's the funniest or the most entertainment that I got from the tweets of when it was announced was watching one of our community members, Kaylin Jordan, who also runs a live stream, and watching him going from "this is the worst thing ever" to maybe 3 tweets from Matt, and he's like, "I love it. I'm in. I'm sold." You know, and I love the fact that you, like, often it could be like, "Oh, we're gonna buy this, and we're not gonna say anything apart from, you know, official press releases and stuff." And I think one of the great things for me about open source is the personality, the personal side of it. You know, you're not just dealing with a massive corporation, but you're dealing with individual contributors, and you can see those individual contributors. And I think that that it's cool to see that Adobe are getting involved and reaching out as well. We do have a question, or we have 2 questions from Talash. I think they kind of lead into each other. His first one is, explain, like he's 5, I assume that's 5-year-old, what exactly is Adobe I/O, and then also how that relates to open source efforts in Adobe.
Ooh, good one. Okay, explain what Adobe I/O is, like your 5-year-old child. Okay. It's going to be Adobe's platform for whatever services, APIs, products that we want developers to consume. There's some stuff on there now. I think there's quite an extensive list if you sign up for an account and jump into your console there. So I would be doing many people a disservice if I tried to list them all, because I'd probably forget several. But there's lots on there, and there's more coming. But we're also, these are, I would say, early steps for Adobe in this kind of providing these types of services. So, you know, there's stuff that is available, stuff that isn't available, stuff that's in closed beta. It's in flux a lot. And we're still getting a handle on how to properly expose this to developers, and then also figuring out how to get this ecosystem of developers working back with us on tangential products around it, whether these are SDKs, client libraries, testing facilities, whatever it is. There's lots to go into there. So, and that's where Steve and I come in. That's part of our role, is to help with the developer experience for all of these products. So I hope that was a good answer.
I'm not sure. We'll find out. He'll reply if it's not. I know Tash quite well. He's in Canada as well, but not in Vancouver. Or is he in Vancouver? He travels a lot, so he might not be there anymore. Okay, so I guess what I found quite interesting recently is, pretty much every Monday there's been a large company investing in open source recently. So we had Adobe and Magento, and then we've had Microsoft and GitHub. So why do you feel, or maybe we can talk a little bit about that, why do you feel that big companies at least appear now to be investing in open source? I'm sure they were before, But what do you think the big kind of drive is behind big companies and open source recently?
Should I go first, Steve, or you want to go first?
I mean, this is almost like the talk you just did at the open source summit we just held.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Okay, well, I can give a rehash of that. So, last month in Basel, in Switzerland, Adobe has an office there, and we did a little get-together, one-day event where open source enthusiasts inside the company, it was a closed event, just internal, got together and talked about best practices, pain points, struggles. We also try to get new people involved in our efforts through these kinds of events. And I did a little talk about why open source is important to Adobe in particular. And I'll go back actually to the question about Adobe I/O to answer this, is that I think with the main demographic of Adobe's customers changing to be more developer-centric. In a lot of ways, Stephen Ballmer was prescient all those years ago when he was yelling developers, developers, developers on stage and sweating profusely. He knew. He might have had some kind of like divine vision in that moment, and he saw what the future of technology would be like, however many years ahead that was from that point in time. But that is the reality, I think, for most big tech companies, is that more and more, kind of no matter what your company does or is in charge of, IT is a critical portion, and more involving external developers in whatever IT systems you build is becoming critical to the business. So that was the argument I kind of made at this little summit event we had in Basel, was that with Adobe I/O being a growing product that Adobe wants to get out there in the public, getting involved in the ecosystem helps make this product better. First of all, I think, to go back to like the quality thing I mentioned around open source. But I think we also get to understand our customers a lot better by working with them side by side, elbow to elbow, as I like to say, on this stuff. So that's why I see this, and I only see this accelerating too. The GitHub Microsoft thing is like a perfect sort of summary of that. And these are just land grabs now, just going at anything that a developer is looking at is the next gold mine.
Cool. Steve, do you have anything to add to that, or?
I mean, I think he covered it well. It's primarily just to get that developer mind share. I think know that developers are your customers now, and I mean, Microsoft is a great example because they've changed their reputation over the years of contributing to open source projects. I still remember the day when they came and put a team on Apache Cordova, and it was just such a pleasure working with them. They didn't come and bulldoze our processes. In fact, they came and learned the way we did things, and contributed within that framework and helped us improve. And I have nothing but good things to say about working with Microsoft on Apache Cordova, and I know they've done this to many other open source communities as well. You know, they're very visible in the Node.js community for doing very similar thing, coming in, working within their processes, learning, putting resources, helping grow the project, making it more mature. So you know, they've realized that their reputation to developers matters. It does. So you know, being a good actor, a good actor in these open source spaces, it does a great job for their reputation, which will hopefully allow more developers to use their services that they like to pay for. And I feel like GitHub is kind of just like another angle in that same kind of strategy they have going. And you know, here at Adobe, I think we're definitely looking at them and learning from them as well.
Yeah, one thing I was interested with looking at the GitHub and Microsoft thing was how many people were so against this. And then I'm like, but have, you know, like years ago, people were complaining of Microsoft and asked them to change. And then they did change. And now it's like, well, what do you want? You know, like there was a tweet about from someone and they're like, you asked them to change, they changed. You want them to invest money, but you don't want them to buy the company or whatever. And it's like, how, that's one of the problems, or one of the challenges with open source, I guess, is like, someone has to make money at the end of the day, you know?
Yeah.
And open source is a great way of doing that, but you do have to be quite careful or respectful, let's put it that way. You have to be respectful. And I once was talking with someone organizing our local meetup here, our local PHP meetup, and we were talking about getting people sponsoring events and stuff like that. And especially with the open source world, it is very, very hard to just buy like, let's just buy the community, or let's just buy an event, or, you know, you can't just chuck the money at something and people will go behind it. You know, you need to gain that trust. And I love the way that Microsoft have done it. And I like what you were saying with Cordova and stuff like that. And I know, a lot of the Node.js stuff as well. And I like the fact that they've done it that way. I just find it quite funny that people haven't seen it, because they've been, I don't know if they've done it quietly or whatever, but they've been doing it for a while, and it was just interesting to see people's reactions to assume it's the same Microsoft from years ago.
Yeah. It seems like a lot of the complaints were around the years ago Microsoft. And pretty much everyone who I know who has worked with a Microsoft employee in the last 5-6 years, they had nothing but good things to say about this acquisition. So just shows you where the negativity, I guess, where the positivity is also coming from.
I think it also speaks to how hard it is to shed a reputation. Actually, at this Basel event I talked about, we call it the Open Source Summit at Adobe. We had former Microsoft, I'm going to say employee, but I forget his title there in the past, but Bill Staples is now a VP of the Experience Cloud at Adobe. And he came in and did a keynote, and he was talking about his journey at Microsoft, being an employee there, and the juxtaposition he presented between in 2001, Steve Ballmer coming out and stating that Linux is cancer, to today being the #1 contributor by employee count on github.com is stark. It's huge. But that is also 17 years in the making. That is a long time. That is a lot of effort. And he described how that cultural change internally at Microsoft took very long, was fraught with failures along the way as well. And really the external visibility to this change didn't start cluing in to the wider development community until he had long left and left his programs and efforts to other people. So I think that just shows how hard this stuff is. And it's also, we'll be really frank, it's also a challenge I think we at Adobe have, because I don't think we necessarily have the best perception in the wider development community as well. There's actually a Twitter poll that Toby Langle, geez, I'm already butchering his name, but he was asking for perception around which companies would you consider open source. He tweeted a bunch of polls for different companies. Microsoft was in there, GitHub was in there, GitLab, blah, 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 blah. Adobe was in there, and at least when I checked this morning, I haven't looked at the latest results, but Adobe and Oracle were the only companies in that poll that had 0% people say, yes, this is an open source company. So, you know, like if this is the wider perception about us at Adobe, first, I think to me and Steve and to the rest of the open source office, we have our work cut out for us, for sure. But two, it's no surprise then the reaction from the Magento community either. given as how open source is such a key part of what has made this a thriving community. So we don't blame you, but all I can say is rest assured that we, at least us, we're trying our best to change those perceptions, to get people on board internally. And there is a massive appetite for that at the company. I think we just have to kind of organize ourselves a little bit is all. And we're hoping we can learn from Magento to help us achieve that.
What size is the open source team at Adobe? Like
there is 5 of us. 5 of us? No, 4 of us. 4 of us.
Okay, so 4 out of like nearly 2,000, right?
There's many employees.
Yeah. Okay, so you got your work cut out, I think, on a percentage-wise.
Yeah, but the open source community within Adobe is growing quite rapidly. I mean, not everyone is going to be running these programs. That's what we're doing, and even the fact that we just created an open source office at the end of 2016, and we had to kind of fight for existence in the early stages of our life, to now where we're actually like able to work on this stuff full time and develop tools, and we've built the relationships with all the legal folks and the marketing and the branding and the various different groups that are interested in open source at Adobe. It's taken some time. But Adobe, we are part of the To-Do Group initiative, which is a lot of different. I don't know if you've heard of the To-Do Group at all, but the idea is that open source folks from various different companies come together and share best practices, resources, how to kind of grow open source within a company. And we've learned a lot from the open source offices at these other companies, Microsoft in particular, and Google as well. Like they're key contributors to this group. Facebook has done a really good job with their open source office as well, and open sourcing a lot of their their frameworks and tools. And so we've definitely been learning from these groups, and that's kind of helping us develop an open source strategy that we can take back to Adobe and push to the higher ups. It's never an issue with the developers. I feel like all the developers who talk about open source are on board. Like immediately they're on board. So trying to have a grassroots effort, it's great and it's working, and that's kind of how our community internally at Adobe is building, our open source community. But now we're also starting to focus on getting that message coming down from the top down as well to help speed up the process as well. And people like Bill Staples are great leaders within Adobe to help move this movement forward. And I know Adobe doesn't have a good, going back to that perception question, like I know Adobe doesn't have a good open source perception to the community at large. You don't think of open source and Adobe really going together, but Adobe does have a history of contributing to open source projects as well. We just don't do a good job of marketing it, I would say. Adobe's very involved in various different Apache projects, and we've built tons of our products on it. We also, PhoneGap is obviously a really good example of an open source project that Adobe acquired and is still going strong. There's also, Brackets, a code editor, which Adobe has released. I think it was back in 2012 or 2013, and it was before Atom, kind of an open source JavaScript-based editor. So there's always been the appetite, but it's, like Phil mentioned, a matter of getting organized properly and kind of creating these resources to really A, help developers open source their stuff, and B, how do we market this properly and give them the resources they need so the project can actually be successful.
Yeah, I think you touched on something that's pretty interesting there. Like we as Magento, we are open source in brackets, in the sense of we have a big community and they help us out and everything. But I think that what we might not be so good at, or we probably need to work on, is more contribution to something that isn't Magento. Like you look at Magento repositories and you're like, oh, that's a lot of pull requests. But it's like how much of that is also going out into the wider community. Like I know Olga, who's been working on PHP 7.2 compatibility, has contributed, or at least in terms of issues and raising questions and stuff with the wider Zen world. And I think that's something that we also need to be better at, is not being siloed as Magento, but also, contributing like how many Magento developers have contributed, like whether it's in the team or also in the community, wider community, how many have contributed back to PHP in general or Apache or something else, you know? And I think that we can see ourselves as open source because we have a great contributing community, but do we and the community also contribute outside of that? Which is a big challenge, I think, for companies in general.
Yeah, it's not easy to do that, and it can be hard to decide when to do it or where to do it or how to do it even. And we've been trying to educate people at Adobe as well. But I think at least at Adobe, there's lots of goodwill from the people doing the work day in and day out to be involved in this way. And there are very tangible, like almost purely economic reasons to get involved in other projects as well. It doesn't have to just be about, you know, I leverage this open source project, so therefore I'm going to contribute back to be a good citizen. From the perspective of risk management, I think it makes a lot of sense to involve yourself in a dependency that you rely on for your own product, right? Your example of Zen, I'm not super well versed in the PHP community, so I apologize in advance for probably saying the wrong things here. But is that an MVC PHP framework? I remember from like
yeah.
Ago.
So Zen has many options. So you can either have individual components, such as like a Zen JSON or Zen Mail or something, or you can also get it as a full bundled like framework that you can build anything from, sort of thing.
Okay. So like if Magento relies on this thing, on this framework, to some degree, then it does make sense to have a stake in the project, be able to have a voice that's respected in that community, and at least have a vote when it comes to charting future direction of the project, right? Making sure that that future direction of your dependency aligns with your own vision for your own product. Or maybe it does not. And that's okay too. Not to say that you need to come in there and be totalitarian about all of this, but even just being aware that such an option is on the table, that, you know, the project may pivot to a different direction that no longer aligns with your own needs on your own product. That gives you an advantage as well. You are given extra time to then make a decision. Okay, do we want to stay on this thing? Do we want to maybe move to something else? So it doesn't always have to be just about, I took some, so now I have to give some back. I think there's a strong business case to make as well.
Yeah, and there's what we've been kind of talking about relatively recently is contribution, and not just in a code way. You know, like having some agencies talk to us about how they actually use Magento is great for us, and that sign of contribution as well, contributing back from that point, is also really important. And documentation side of stuff and all that. Like the community contributes whether they code or not, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think it's definitely not talked about enough in the open source community, is the actually wide definition of what a contribution is. You don't have to cut code to contribute. I always say the first step to solving a problem is identifying it. And so filing a bug is a great contribution. You as the maintainer might react to it, maybe not purely positively. Maybe you see that as, oh, it's the hangout. Am I back? Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're back.
We can hear you. Your video froze, but you're good.
Okay, weird. What was I saying? Oh yeah, you as the maintainer of a project, when you see a new bug get filed, your initial reaction might not be, oh yay, I'm now more aware of my project. It might be, oh no, another thing I have to fix. But that's actually a good thing, because the alternative is you're not aware that this is a problem at all. And so again, we go back to the topic of quality in your software. Issues filed, reviews done, pull requests sent. You know, all of these, I think, are contributions as well.
Yeah. No, that's cool. We do have a question. So we are taking questions from live chat. So if you do have a question, feel free to drop it in and we will do our best to answer it. It's another one from Telesh. I should probably send him something for all the questions. Well, he's not going to be in Magento UK anymore, so I can't give him anything there. So that's his own fault for not turning up to the event. So his question, and I have no idea whether we can answer it or not, is since Adobe I/O has a commerce integration framework, what are your thoughts on how that will work or be replaced or integrate whatever with Magento in the future? Can we answer that?
I have
honestly,
no idea that we had a commerce integration framework, so I cannot answer that.
Great. Thanks, Telesh. To be confirmed or to whatever. Yeah. Okay. With regards to contribution and Adobe and encouraging people to contribute from Adobe outside, what do we need to do to get Adobe people contributing with Magento?
Contributing to Magento?
Yeah, exactly. How do we get you in earlier than the 30 days?
I think things are slowly starting to happen here. We've had some submissions come our way, which, you know, I don't know if we could talk about exactly what they are right now, but there are definitely Adobe employees who have already started going down this path. We recently got the CLA approved for Magento, so that's signed and ready to go. Adobe employees are totally approved. It's on our whitelist now. So if employees want to get in there, they're welcome to start. Phil, anything to add on there?
No, yeah, you nailed it there. The only thing I would add is, you know, as part of our responsibilities as the open source office is just also double checking some of the legal bits for our devs wanting to get involved. You know, I'm a developer, and I can tell you honestly that it took me 10 years to even have a basic sense of what the different licenses mean, how that affects my day-to-day. So just having us around to be able to tell people like, hey, did you check the contributor license agreement? Does it look okay? Anything in there that freaks you out? Because in the end, Magento does require you to sign a legal document. And it's important to understand what that thing even means. So yeah, we received a submission yesterday to ask if it's okay to contribute to Magento. The CLA was it was interesting. It was a little different from what we'd have seen in the past. So we had our friends in the legal department take a look at it, and they gave us the thumbs up. So the floodgates are open. Adobe employees, if you're listening, head on over to github.com/magento/magento2 is the URL, I think.
That's the main repository, yeah. We also have our PWA side, and yeah, if you start there, that's the good place to start.
So there's no blaming bureaucracy at this point. They are free to jump in there and get their hands dirty. So hopefully we start seeing some people getting involved.
Nice, cool. Well, if anyone is interested and not sure how to start, feel free to reach out to me. You can tweet me. I'm at MannersD. Or you can tweet engcom, Magento engcom. That is also me, as you could probably tell by the spelling mistakes and bad humor. Yes. And also, we have lots of events coming up in Europe. I know Adobe has people in Europe. So we've got an event in London and in Leipzig in Germany, which also come with contribution days. For me, contribution days are about teaching people how to get involved. And then setting them free in the rest of their life to contribute. So yeah, contribution days are awesome for us in getting people in. And we have another question from Telesh. This is okay. Fourth question. I need to send him some swag, I think. How extensive is PHP used, if at all, within the Adobe development team, or what about JS as well?
Okay, the PHP one, I can actually take that one. I'll leave the JS one for Steve because he's a big JS guy. I know he loves JS. But the
Someone
PHP
has to.
one, I recently looked at as part of helping out Bill with his keynote for that open source summit. He was curious about generally what the open source versus proprietary split on our products was. Just to see like our products, 50% open source, 10% open source, 90% open source, blah, blah, blah. So I did some hand wavy math to try to figure that out. And I did see that one of the products had tons and tons of PHP dependencies. So one of the products is definitely heavy in PHP world. I believe it is the analytics product. I'm pulling up my spreadsheets to double check that, but I know that team is heavy in there. They use tons of different stuff from the PHP world. But other than that, I don't think so. My own experience setting up Adobe Analytics on some websites, I do recall that there were client libraries and SDKs for PHP available from it. So I feel like that's the one product, at least, that I've seen PHP get thrown out quite a bit.
Yeah, and I mean, I feel like JavaScript is popular all over the world right now. So, I mean, Adobe's no different. We're using it. We're using React quite a bit internally, and hope soon externally as well. That's kind of the framework we seem to be aligning around. And you know, I come from contributing to the Node.js world as well, using Node.js quite a bit. So, you know, I have a little soft spot for them. And I don't think at Adobe we really enforce you use one or the other. So it depends on the team and what they want to use and what their engineers are comfortable using. So I don't see any type of mandate coming in saying, hey, you can't use PHP, you got to use, you know, X, Y, and Z. That's not going to happen. But for sure, maybe there are certain technologies that are more prevalent across the company. But yeah, I wouldn't worry about us trying to make you change your stack. That's definitely not something that's going to happen.
Cool.
I think we've got something like 6,000 to 7,000 engineers at the company. So I don't think mandating a programming language or anything like that would ever happen.
Okay, that's good to know. We do have one question from Alexei, who's also part of the community engineering team here. And he's asking, is your PHP project, is it open source? Is it on GitHub? I assume that's what he means by open source. That's what most people mean.
Yeah, I don't know. We have the beyond github.com/Adobe. There are, I think, 20-something other organizations that Adobe owns, manages, and releases code on. I can take a look and get back to you on the Twitters if you're curious. But that's I don't have anything offhand. So
cool, that's good. Apparently, Telesh has already tweeted him some stuff. So we work quick here. So cool. I'm just trying to check if okay. So we've still got a bit of time if people have any questions coming in. But why don't we take a moment and not talk about open source in general? So this one isn't in the list of questions I sent you before, so we're going to have a little bit of a shot. Steve, can you tell us one thing about you, not to do with work, maybe a hobby, whatever, something you do outside of Adobe?
Okay. Well, as I spoke earlier, that I'm from Vancouver, Canada. So as any other Canadian, I love ice hockey. And so I play on a team, on a beer league team down here. So just, you know, once a week, twice a week sometimes. And I would say that's probably my strongest passion outside of work. And I didn't play growing up. So it was definitely something I just picked up as an adult. I had to learn how to skate. I had to, yeah, pretty much from the beginning. But yeah, it's something I absolutely love. And any chance I get to hit the ice, I take it.
Okay, I can tell you now, I have tall on ice. I'm Scottish, and we get it cold. Don't do ice hockey or anything like that. So I have a very high skill level of falling on my ass. That's about it. Okay. Same question to you, Phil. Then, what about you?
Yeah. Funny enough, it seems like me and Steve do everything together almost. We both started learning how to play ice hockey together as adults. But I'll answer something differently. My more recent venture has been learning to surf. So that's my thing. It's trying to learn to surf, which is difficult to do in Canada. I would not actually recommend it.
Yeah, I can imagine surfing in Canada doesn't go so well. How did you get it? Yeah, how? Why did you do that?
Just to try something different, you know. It's a great exercise. It is a brutal sport to learn, though. Don't expect to take a couple lessons and be able to handle it yourself. It's more of at least a couple-week investment. Take it from me. Set aside a bunch of time if you want to take the plunge. It's a steep learning curve. Yeah, but it's fun. Cool. A nice change from sitting in front of the computer all day, no?
Yeah. No, that's cool. Okay, last question from Talesh. What sessions at Immerse 2018 event are you most excited for? I assume that's your big conference. If you're going.
I'm not going, but I believe Matt is speaking. And because Matt is my superior somewhere up the chain, I must recommend him in order to get my bonus later. So, Matt, if you're watching, we'll talk later.
Okay.
Yeah. Same with Phil. I'm not going either.
Oh, it's a virtual conference, he says. Oh, interesting. Matt, by Matt, I assume you mean Matt SA or Matt ACDC, right? As was tweeted
Matt
earlier.
ACDC, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He used to play in that band, if I recall.
Cool. Okay. When are you going to get yourself to a Magento conference? There we go. There's a question.
Yeah. When's the next one? And don't you all have like tons?
Yeah. Yeah. So the next one that I know about is in London, and that's on the 12th and 13th or 11th.
Are you going to pay for my flights?
I won't. No, but someone might.
Okay.
We have many conferences. Too many, I think, honestly. But it's all localized.
Yeah, we're gonna have to get out to some of those for sure, and we'll look to you to figure out which ones are the best ones for us to attend. You know, being based on the West Coast, it's always a little easier for us if it's nearby. But I like traveling too, so throw them at me.
Okay. Yeah, that's one.
Which one would you recommend? Which one would you recommend for like a complete newbie? Just getting their feet wet.
Is a great question. Yes, I am a huge fan of the Unconference, which is happening in October, or the German one is happening in October. The PHP Unconference was the first PHP conference I ever went to, I think, maybe the second. And we also do a Magento Unconference, or Firegento host that. I also recommend the Meet Magentos. They're normally pretty good. Meet Magento Netherlands, we just had, it was the 10th anniversary, I think, of that event. So they've been going for a while. And that's a good mix of both business and developer, whereas the Unconference is purely like a community, not sales, not whatever. Last year we had one of our maintainers. She is also a first responder, so in Austria, and she did a what to do, like how to do first aid sort of thing as an event. So that was pretty cool. I think I was her dummy which was an interesting experience to be a first aid dummy. Talesh recommends Mage North and the Mage Meetup, or that's the Mage Magento Meetup in Toronto. The meetups are pretty good as well. Yeah, and of course there's Imagine, but you just missed that one. So you got to wait a year for Imagine. Yeah, that's the Vegas one. That's the big one. Oh, and yes, thank you, Misha. Magento Live in Barcelona is coming up. That is in October. That is probably the next big Magento run one. The Meet Magento ones are run by local agencies and supported by the Magento Association. So they're more specific to a location. We've got New York, plenty of them, like 50, I believe, across the world. But yeah, Magento Live is the next big Magento run one. That's in Barcelona. I believe there'll also be a contribution day there. We're just trying to finalize that at the moment. Yeah, we have too many events to deal with. No one can ever go to all of them. But that's.
I like Barcelona. Sounds great.
Okay, cool. I'll see you there, October.
It's a date.
Nice. All right. So unless there are any questions that come up in the next couple of minutes in the live chat, I think this is probably a great place to cut it. So yeah, guys, thanks for coming in and hopefully calming down the community, opening up to see what Adobe does with open source, and dodging some tricky questions pretty well. So yeah, thank you so much for joining us. What is the best place if someone wants to contact you? What is the best place of reaching out to you guys?
Twitter, for sure.
Yeah, probably Twitter. Me and Phil both joined the Magento Engineering Slack as well, so you can always reach out to us there.
Yeah, the ComEng one, I think it's called.
Yeah, there is community engineering. You can get to it via tinyurl/engcom-signup. I think we should probably get something that's a little easier than that. But yeah, that's our community engineering Slack. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, either of those are good. And thanks a lot for having us.
Before you go, what are your Twitter handles, just in case someone doesn't have them?
Mine's Phil Maj, FILMAJ. It's my name.
Mine's Steve S. Gill.
Cool. All right. Then thank you very much for joining us, and thank you very much for watching. And yeah, tune in next month. We will be doing Page Builder, I believe, is next month. So come in and get a demo about the Page Builder project and see how that will be coming in for Magento 2.3. And in the meantime, feel free to reach out to us if you need anything. If you want to get involved, Slack, Twitter, whatever, hit us up and say, how can I get involved with a contribution? All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.